Brandon, really excited about our first guest here on Podcast 18, Vice Chancellor for Intercollegiate Athletics at Ole Miss. You know him as a four-year starter on the men's basketball team and now the AD for the Ole Miss Rebels. It's Keith Carter. And Keith, Brandon and I were laughing before getting you on. When you have a title like Vice Chancellor for Intercollegiate Athletics, is that one you want to hear said like that? That's the type of guy you are, right? You want to hear the whole title every time, right?
Yeah, I was actually hoping we could add a few more lines to the title as well, and just so you can't even fit it on a business card. No, honestly, not a huge title guy. Athletics director, whatever you want to call me. I just like getting to come to work here every day.
For sure.
We're going to start going to just the acronym, just like Vika Carter.
I like it.
Well, we appreciate you making time. We know it's a busy time of year. With the sense of free time, are you a podcast listener yourself? Do you have anything you go to, or is this going to be now your go-to podcast?
Oh, this will definitely be the go-to moving forward. No, I don't have like podcasts that I routinely listen to. If somebody says, "Hey, you need to go listen to this," or "This is good," I'll pick it up and listen as I'm driving or whatever. Between kind of the stuff we do here at Ole Miss and then my family and 3 kids and activities and all those things, it's not a lot of time for podcasts, but I do like some of the content from time to time. But yeah, I'll have to add this one to my weekly routine.
Do you have time to hoop? How often do you get out on the floor still?
Never.
No.
Never. I have time. I could make time to hoop. I just don't want to. I'm too old. Too many injury possibilities. Too many friends that have torn Achilles and ACLs and those type of things. And I'll tell you what, whenever I go out and watch our guys and gals practice, I'm like, I don't know how I ever did that. I mean, they're so fast and strong and physical and all those things. So I just prefer, watching from the sidelines.
It's a new crop at Old Man Hoops. I don't see you or B-Hut out there anymore. So maybe you two can go one-on-one. I think that's the plan.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
We could probably do that.
I could post up, Keith. I could post you up. There's no doubt about it.
As long as there's athletic trainers available right after.
Yeah, no doubt. I was telling Seth right before you came on a story about like maybe my first time you came out and played at Old Man Hoops, and we were, there was a kid that was a manager for the women's team who came out and played, and it was like first time down the court, he shoots a 3 and you don't really guard him. You kind of just put your hand up and he makes it, and he like mouths off, says something like, like got it or whatever. And I could tell we were on the same team. I could tell it perturbed you a little bit that it was the first shot of the game and the guy's already talking. And so we go back down, and I told Seth, I was like, basically he was guarding you. Said you took like a fake step, like you're going to drive, and then stepped back and shot a 3. It was nothing but net. And then you like basically were like, oh, so now we're going to talk or we're going to play or something like that. I was like, he's still got a little fire in there. Still fire in the belly there for some hoops.
Yeah. I think if you talk to people that I played with throughout the years, I'm probably not that guy that initiates the trash talk a lot of times, but I like to finish it from time to time. Yeah.
So you did that day.
And plus, when you're getting older, you do have some pride when the young people kind of, get in your face or whatever. But I think I actually played hard that game, and that may have been the last pickup game I've ever played.
Do you play with your kids? Like, does Drew play? Do your kids play basketball? And have they been able to kind of take you yet, or take the old man, or are you still showing them who's boss?
Yeah, so Drew is 16. He's in the 11th grade. He plays at Oxford High School, and he's about to get to the point where I think I could probably still beat him. But again, I wouldn't feel good coming out of the matchup because he moves really well, and I don't move as well anymore. So yeah, we'll get out there, and that's really kind of the extent. We'll play a little one-on-one from time to time, but a lot of horse, a lot of around the world, stuff like that.
Yeah, that's fun.
Well, you're a fan favorite here, Keith, and I have to wonder, of all the years since you've graduated, who were some of your favorite players that you've gotten to watch? Who was just maybe your particular favorite Rebel?
In basketball or
yes,
across the board?
In basketball.
Oh yeah, a lot of great players. I love the team that was just right after I left, the team that went to the Sweet 16 with Justin and Aaron and David Sanders, Raheem, all those guys. I mean, that was a great team. Obviously the team with Marshall and Reggie and Murphy, that was a great team. But, we've always had kind of these polarizing, players that could really play. You know, you had Marshall, you had Stephon Moody, you had TD. You know, to watch what TD has done from the time he came in as a freshman and averaged, you know, just a couple points a game to being an NBA guy.
Chris Warren showing out in the TBT, the basketball tournament, a couple of weeks ago.
Exactly. So I've really enjoyed that, and I think, you know, having played here, to watch, you know, the success we've had, you know, throughout AK and now Kermit, and you know, it's fun to watch these guys, and a lot of, you know, not a ton of NBA guys, but a ton of guys that played overseas, and, you know, really good players that did a great job for Ole Miss.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a kid from Pittsburgh, went to school in Ohio, and Marshall Henderson was my favorite player in the country, just as a college kid watching someone have fun play, and then moved to Birmingham, worked in covering the SEC, and then Stephon Moody became my favorite players. You talk about guys that aren't your LeBrons, aren't your KDs, but had that kind of grasp nationally at where someone could say, that's my favorite player in the country. That says a lot for the kind of talent that's rolled through here.
It really does. And you know, I don't know why. I mean, we've had NBA caliber guys, you know, that have come through, and just for whatever reason, you know, they haven't been able to make it, or, you know, we have some guys that for sure could play in the NBA. And I'm so glad that TD's getting that opportunity now. He's worked so hard, and I hope that kind of opens the floodgates for Ole Miss, you know, some guys that'll be able to make it to that level. But a lot of great basketball. We've won a lot of games, and you know, again, to be a former student athlete and having a little sweat equity in that program is pretty cool to see.
What kind of basketball player do you think Lane Kiffin is?
Wow, now that's a good question.
He's slimmed down.
What's that?
He's slimmed down some, so maybe, you know.
Yeah, definitely moving a little better now. I'm going to say finesse. I'm going to say he's one of those guys that probably stays out, shoots a lot of threes. And again, hey, no problem with that. I'm kind of that guy too. I don't see him wanting to get banged around a lot in the paint, you know? And so probably shooting a lot of threes, 100% talking some smack. That's going to happen. But I think it'd be fun. I actually played a little pickup with his brother when he was here with some of the football staff, and you didn't want to mess with Chris in the paint. Now that guy, he would work you over pretty good. But I think Lane's more of an outside guy.
So if you talking one-on-one matchups right now, you in your prime or Terrence Davis, who wins?
Probably Terrence. That wasn't really my thing. Like I wasn't going to line up and cross you over, and you know that I was more of a system guy. You know.
All right, both of you in your prime, Kermit Davis.
One-on-one with Kermit?
Yeah.
Ooh, I think I could get him. I haven't seen any footage of him in his prime. Maybe just with the height advantage, that could probably get him. I doubt he was quite as athletic as Terrence. Maybe he was. I don't know. I haven't seen. But I would feel like better chances with Kermit than Terrence.
You right now or Shakira Austin? Who wins?
Oh, 100. I told somebody this the other day. She was walking down the hallway like the first day of school, and I got behind her, and like she's a legitimate 6'6". Like she is tall.
Yeah.
And I said to myself, there is no chance I would want any part of playing her. Man, what a talent. You know, to be able to do what she can do at 6'6", and I guess that's why she's projected to be in the top 5 of the NBA, WNBA draft. But yeah, wouldn't want any part of that.
And that their whole program is big time, just taking a step forward, with the players. You can just see such a difference whenever you watch them practice, you go to games, just the mentality around the program is just so different. And, Coach Yo's 4 years, it's just been really neat to see too on that side.
Yeah, it's great. I think the run we had last year in the NIT, was fantastic. And to get those extra games with so many young players, really everyone coming back, I think that's huge. And, that's kind of what you see, coaches getting their 3rd and 4th year, they finally start to put their stamp on the program. And I think we're really seeing that. I think we're going to have a great season. I think that's an NCAA tournament team, and excited to watch them play.
We talk about moving into a second year, developing players, getting players in. Lane Kiffin and the guys kick it off in Atlanta this Monday. What do these kickoff games, the Power 5 primetime matchups, do for the recognition of Ole Miss?
Well, we've had a series of these over the past, 10 years or so, and they're kind of dwindling down. We don't have another one of these kind of neutral site matchups on the schedule moving forward. Not to say that we won't, but I think they've been really good. I think that, you've got Alabama and Miami playing on Saturday night there. And obviously I guess Saturday afternoon, a lot of buzz. And, the Monday night game is a prime time window before, Monday Night Football starts. I mean, so all eyes are going to be on us. I think, tons of viewership. And, we think that's good. We think that's good. And Louisville, an opponent that's had, some really good teams over the past 10 or 15 years. And I think it's going to be a great matchup. So, I think we'll always strategically to try to find, look to try to find those type of matchups where, all the eyeballs can be on us. But at the same time, as we move forward, a lot of home and homes coming and some different things there that may not lend themselves to as many neutral site games.
After Louisville back home for 2, soccer's off and running. Volleyball has a home tournament this weekend. Cross country gets going on Saturday. Golf rifles soon, and before you know it, it's going to be basketball. A year of normalcy is what we're hoping for after the year that we had that was impacted by COVID. Where do you feel we are moving into these 2021 seasons?
Well, like you said, Seth, I mean, it's crazy that it's just upon us. It's all here, COVID. And, I've told people, to me, COVID in some ways feels like it's been 20 years and some, 20 days. It's gone by fast in some ways and slow in others. But it's exciting for the students, for the student athletes. I can see it in their faces. They're so ready to be back and playing the sport they love with crowds, in the stands. And, that was hard on them last year. All the internal stuff that they were doing with testing and protocols and, just travel restrictions and so many things. And then, you get to your competition and there's hardly anybody there to watch you. So, you kind of had a little bit of a letdown there. So I'm excited for them, to see a full Vaught Hemingway, to see a full soccer stadium or volleyball venue. So I'm excited about that. But, from a COVID standpoint, we've been in really good shape. I think we're up to about 85% totally vaccinated in our athletic department with our student athletes. So hoping to push towards, 100%. But I feel like we're setting ourselves up well. And, obviously we're going to monitor the virus and we have to do that. And, I do think the cases are starting to make their way, in the right direction. And hopefully that continues to be the case. We can, get our hospital beds, have a few of those more available. And we're certainly working with local officials there to make sure that we're being good partners. But everybody's ready to play. I think the fans are ready to come watch, and it's going to be a fun fall.
Post-COVID, there's obviously a lot of things that if you're not upgrading, if you're not updating, you're falling behind. You came up through the foundation side of fundraising, 2016 fundraiser of the year, Keith Carter, just so everybody knows. I don't know how many of you knew that, but what do you think? I was here for a lot of the Forward Together campaign, and because of working through marketing, and we kind of had a team back then that everyone was putting all of their resources into that Forward Together campaign to make it as successful as possible. And it was, and, still, there's still remnants of that, throughout a lot of our facilities and things that we did with the pavilion and with upgrades to football and, even some baseball pieces. What's that next step in your mind? Is there something on the horizon from a capital campaign standpoint? Do you feel like it's time to maybe launch something else in that regard, from a fundraising, from a, capital campaign, to where, we have some really nice facilities, don't get it twisted, and we're continuously upgrading. But what does that kind of next step look like as it relates to, capital projects and fundraising?
Yeah, it's actually a very timely question. We're in the kind of quiet phase of a master plan right now, where we got a company, HOK, out of Kansas City, that's helping us with that, and then also planning a capital campaign that's going to go along with that. So we're actually going to tease a little bit of that in Atlanta this weekend. We have a dinner for our Vaught Society folks in Atlanta at the College Football Foundation, so we're going to tease a little bit of that. But we hope to roll out the official launch maybe right after the first of the year for a new capital campaign that we think could probably be in the $300 to $400 million range, a big number. And it would include, renovations to the Manning Center. That's one of the projects we're going to get started right after the season this year. Softball, soccer, second phase of golf, probably some components to baseball with some of the outfield seating and some different components there. Academic building, And then the new kind of the cherry on top, and really the biggest piece of it, is a total renovation to the west side of the football stadium, which, it's an area that has been there a long time. There's a lot of unusable space, a lot of, you really can't go in there and kind of patchwork it. We're going to probably have to come down to the slab and start over. And so we actually were out the past couple of days touring some other venues at other places, getting some ideas, and got some great ideas. And so we're excited about it. And you make a great point. If you're not moving forward, you're moving backwards. And, in our league now, obviously with the addition of Texas and Oklahoma, two powerful brands that are going to just, raise the bar in our league, in our already great league. And so for Ole Miss, we've got to make sure that we're remaining relevant, that we're building great facilities, we're keeping great coaches, we're winning championships, so that we continue to have that great seat at the table. And, that's going to be on all of us as an administration, as student athletes, coaches, donors. It's going to take us all to do that. And so that's kind of the vision for this new campaign. And we're excited to roll it out here in the next 5 or 6 months.
I didn't hear podcast studio. Just back of your mind. Back of your mind.
Keep that in mind. Yeah.
We'll talk to HOK about that and see if they can squeeze it in the master plan.
One of my favorite things about Vaught Hemingway, and one of the things that pains me, is that at any side of Vaught Hemingway, you know where you are because it all looks different. So if you're in the east, west, north, south, you always know, like, hey, I'm on the east side or whatever. So it'll be exciting, though, I think, to get that, some of those areas updated. Like you said, the west side is certainly one that, because of the patchwork that you talked about, it's been patchworked over years to try to get it to where it is. I think it'd be really cool to see some of those updates and upgrades, and especially being right there next to Pavilion, which is, one of the nicest arenas in college basketball. So it'll be nice.
Well, and I think, we have a pretty good, we're probably going to base some of our architecture around what we see on the south end zone. You look there, and that's kind of the showpiece of the stadium. It's the newest part. Sure. So we'll probably kind of work some of that architecture around the west side. There will be some north end zone components of this campaign too, as we want to enhance the student section and create some social areas for them and do some things that can be really cool, I think. But then what I'm really tasking our architects and master plan group to do, and it may not be in this iteration or this campaign, but we want to go ahead and kind of pencil out what it could look like if we moved on around to the east side of the stadium too, so that we can show donors at some point, hey, it's not going to happen with this go around, but in the next 10 years, here's what our stadium is going to look like. And to the point you made, Brandon, we don't have 4 different looks in our stadium. We're going to have a really complete and symmetrical stadium that everyone's excited about. And, that's kind of the goal as we work through this.
Another story for another day. I once got lost in Bryant-Denny Stadium because it looks exactly the same everywhere you go on all sides.
Very symmetrical. Yeah.
Another story for another day. Let's talk about briefly, really just a broad overview, but name, image, and likeness, exploded onto the scene this year, almost overnight, literally overnight. People at midnight tweeting out, about companies that they were trying to sign with. I know we have a group that we've kind of have assigned to it internally to try to navigate the waters of what it all looks like. What is to date, kind of what has been the experience of that, and where do you see kind of that going, or just maybe some insight into that side of things?
Yeah, we're about 60 days in. It started July 1st. And so the first couple months have been good. I think we're at about 100 transactions with our student athletes right now. A lot of those in football. But yeah, I think it's been good. We have a third party company called Influencer, who we were already partnered with from a branding and social media standpoint. They added an NIL component to their platform. So we just re-upped with them on that. And so they're doing a great job for us. But we want to be first movers. We want to make sure that at Ole Miss we're giving our student athletes every opportunity and resource to profit from their name, image, and likeness. But at the same time, we don't want to jump so far ahead that, we look back in 6 months and we've done something that might, risk the eligibility of a student athlete or put us in a precarious situation. So trying to balance that a little bit. But yeah, our coaches are asking us questions. They're seeing things that are happening in other places. And again, we want to make sure that our student athletes have every opportunity possible. So I think you'll see some things coming out over the next 4 or 5 months that are creative and proactive. we're not putting the toothpaste back in the tube. That's for sure. I mean, NIL and really, I think NIL is kind of just the start of where we're going with student athlete welfare and some of the opportunities they're going to have. What does the NCAA look like in 5 years? Are we looking more like a pro model rather than an amateur model? I'm not sure, but you can either, stick your head in the sand and say, we don't want to do that and we're not going to do that. But guess what? It's not going backwards. And so we want to make sure that we are first movers and do a lot of things there to help student athletes and then coaches as well, as we talk about bringing the best and brightest to Ole Miss.
Last real thing.
If you're not doing it, other people are. And that's kind of where, we have an opportunity, I think, as Ole Miss to always be in that conversation where it's like, let's go ahead and get ahead of it. Because other people are going to do it at some point. Other people want to do whatever it is, whatever that next thing is. Someone's going to do it. And because of where we are, like, let's be the first to do that. And I feel like we've tried to stay ahead of that curve in a lot of different areas and have done a good job of that. So, I'm excited to see what the next thing is with it.
Yeah. And really, there's two things you got to look at. Obviously there's going to be, NCAA enforcement. You don't want to do anything that's going to get you in trouble there. But then what's so interesting about NIL right now is that really every state has their own set of rules and laws. And so, we could do something here in Mississippi that maybe they couldn't in Tennessee or vice versa. So we're trying to navigate all that and make sure that we're doing the right things and complying and all of that. But, like I said, we were traveling and seeing some of these stadiums, and you go into some of these cities and there's just some inherent advantages that they have because the cities are bigger. There's more industry. There's more people with eyeballs on, their programs and athletes in that city. And so we're going to have to be creative here. We're going to have to figure out ways that we can, bridge that gap with some of these bigger markets. And you know what? We've been doing that for years in other ways. I mean, there's advantages that others have over us every day. And we've been efficient. We've tried to be proactive and creative, and we'll do that with NIL as well.
Last real thing, Keith, we got for you, just the success of the women's golf team. I mean, that's a crowning achievement for any program. You win a national championship. That's what you set out to do every year. First of all, what does that mean to our university to have that program? And two, what can other programs learn from Corey and her staff and her team as they achieved the ultimate goal?
Yeah, what an awesome run by our young ladies and Corey and Zach. I mean, just to watch them perform, throughout the run there in the postseason, and then to do what they did at Greyhawk was just amazing. And, I was there. I was fortunate enough to be able to be on the grounds, and just the energy and excitement. And, it was great for them individually, first and foremost, but for our university, for our athletics department, just couldn't ask for any better representation of what, those ladies did for us. And that's kind of the bar, they've set the bar. And I know in some sports, it's not always apples to apples when you're talking about winning a national championship. But, when Corey got here 5 or 6 years ago, we were pretty far from a national championship. We weren't in that conversation at all. Now you go win one. I think we're preseason number 3 in the country this year. You can build things here at Ole Miss. And, I think that as we go into this campaign, one of the things we're going to talk a lot about as we're talking about other projects is that the Tosh short course directly impacted us winning a national championship. We had a donor that stepped up. We built a short course. And our coaches and players will tell you that without that, there's no chance they would have won that national championship. So as we talk about facilities in other sports, guess what? That translates, and we can talk to donors about that. But I've got the championship trophy right outside the office here. I keep it close, and Corey wants it, but I'm like, hey, I gotta hold on to it a little bit. We actually made some replicas, so I have my own replica now that I get to hold on to.
When you bring in other coaches, you say this is the goal, and then
they have to walk by it when they come in the office. So I'm like, hey, take a look at this. We need a few more of these.
I know how you feel. Look, there's slow pitch softball trophy. You got to have it present.
There you go. Very comparable there, Seth.
The exact same thing.
Yeah, slow pitch softball to the NCAA championship. I
think I went 0 for 4 in the game too, so that's why I get to keep it in my office.
Hey, it's a team sport. It's a team sport.
You've had AD in your title in some sense for several years now. As the head guy or interim head guy and head guy for several years, what are some of those moments that you look back over those time and you just go like, wow, this is why you get into it? Obviously the national championship has to be up there, but what are some of those other moments that just immediately kind of pop in your head?
There's really kind of countless moments with student athletes individually, just the relationships that I've been able to build with them. And it's not always about success on the field or the court, but it could be about graduation. It could be about a situation they're dealing with personally, and having a small part in some of that has been really cool. Probably one of my best moments I've had as the AD was about this time last year. And I'd like to go out and speak to every team before their seasons and just encourage them and let them know that I'm here for them and those type of things. And I remember it was one of kind of some of the dark days of COVID, like late July, when we were like, we're not sure if this is going to happen.
Right.
And we've been going through just these tough Zoom calls with the league office and medical task force. And I remember it was a Friday, and I went out to speak to women's soccer. And I just remember going out there. I wasn't in a great mood. It was Friday afternoon, like 5. I was ready to go home and had this obligation. And I go out there, and they had just gotten their schedule the day before for the fall. So they knew they were going to play. They knew they were going to play games. And this was their first practice. And I remember just seeing their faces and like the smiles on their faces. I watched them practice for about 45 minutes. They were having fun. And I remember driving home from that saying, dude, like, this is why you do it. Like all of those Zoom calls, all the things that you're dealing with, this is why you work hard to make the seasons happen, because these student athletes want and need those opportunities. And so it was like a moment for me. Like, I was like, come on, man, quit feeling sorry for yourself. This is why we do it, for these young ladies, these young men. But it's so rewarding. And you mentioned development. I came up through development where you build great relationships with donors and so many different people. But in that world, you don't get to spend a lot of time around student athletes. And as the AD, I get to say what I get to do. So I spend a ton of time with student athletes, and that's just been a real joy for me.
Well, this is awesome, Keith. And of course, that soccer team went on to the Sweet 16 after the excitement of finding out when their season started. Well, you've been gracious with your time. We'll look forward to getting to do this again, but great start to the fall, and we're excited for what the rest of 2021 holds. Thanks, Keith.
Awesome. Thank you, guys.